Hello again, and welcome to the 18th Annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales, I'm your moderator. We're sponsored this year by the Journal of Educators Online. If you'd like to take a look at that, it has some really good, appropriate articles for everyone who's attending. Uh, URL is thejeo.com. So thejeo.com. Take a look at it. I've found it interesting. Um, we have with us Laura Hopkins. She's been the EIR Accessibility Coordinator at the University of Texas at Arlington since 2018. Has a Master of Science in IT Management, CPAC certification from the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, and a whole basket full of other certifications. Uh, Laura also is a contributing auditor to Gaming, Wellness, and Technology in the Bold Global Workforce, published by IGA Global Scientific public publishing in 2025. And so this is an interesting topic. Show me a campus. Why did you show me an EII accessibility program that works? That's the key, isn't it, Laura? Having a program that actually works. So let me turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. And thank you for allowing me to come and share what we've learned here at UT Arlington over the last several years. Um, and I will be sharing my presentation file with Bob so that he can share the links with everyone. Anytime I share a PowerPoint file, I include this slide. So if someone receives the file that uses a screen reader, they'll know that there's notes, content in the notes pane and how to access it. So just a little bit about me in case someone watches the presentation later and skips over the intro. Here's my large disclaimer. I am not an attorney and I am not giving you legal advice. I am telling you the programs that we've set up here at UT Arlington that have been blessed by our legal counsel. Before we jump right in, I need to make sure we have some common vocabulary. So when we're talking about being accessible or accessibility, we're talking about equal access to people with disabilities. Just last week, someone emailed me, I can't sign into Adobe. Okay, that's not the kind of access we're talking about on this call. It's about equal access. EIR is the Texas term for digital resources, electronic and information resources. At the federal level, they refer to it as ICT. Same thing, right? Those phrases, those acronyms are interchangeable. WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, these are the standards. So, from a legal perspective, for us as a campus to say we are accessible, that means we are WCAG 2.1 AA compliant. VPAT is a template. It's a Word document published by itic.org that lists all of the WCAG criteria and gives vendors an opportunity to indicate that they support each of the required success criteria. All right, let's advance the slide. So this slide has a photograph of a gentleman in a wheelchair at the top of some stairs. What's the barrier? What is the issue in this picture? So as you're thinking about that, historically, before the 1970s, the common response would have been, well, he's in a wheelchair. Whatever put him in the wheelchair is the problem. But we have evolved as a society since then, and we understand that being in wheelchairs is normal. A lot of people are in wheelchairs. At my campus, we've had world championship wheelchair basketball teams. We have lots of wheelchair users on campus. We want these people on campus. The problem is not that there's a wheelchair present. The problem are the stairs. Sight Improved defines disability as a mismatch between one's abilities and one's environment. As a school, we cannot control someone's abilities, all right? Everyone's different, but we control the environment. Is the environment a PDF? Is it a website? Is it an email? Is it a video? That's what we control. And we have to be sure that the environment we as a school provide our students, our employees, and our visitors provide equal access. This is usually where I pause for questions, but under this format, I'm just going to keep on plowing through. Feel free to put something in the chat, and if Bob thinks that we should pause for a moment, he'll interrupt and we'll go ahead and answer that question at the time. Otherwise, we'll have time at the end. So what is EIR? Let's define it. The state of Texas definition is just a whole page of text. I even tried to diagram the sentences one time to make sense of it, and I couldn't do it. So here's the way Laura Hopkins defines EIR. Number one, it's hardware. It's not just software. It's kiosks and printers and uh, displays on lathe machines, right? Hardware. It's websites, both websites we control ourselves or any website we send someone to. Go to this website to order your graduation photos. Okay, that's in scope. Software, including software as a service. The miscellaneous bucket. These are your PDFs, your emails, videos, social media, right? If it's electronic, if it has a graphic user interface, it's going to be in scope. And then the last bucket is any vendor service that touches those other buckets have to meet the WCAG criteria. So when I say EIR or digital resources, these are the things that I'm talking about. And these are the things that are in scope for the rules on accessibility. In case you're not familiar with WCAG, the standards have three levels: A, which is the base level, AA, and AAA. What the new DOJ rule does is it states WCAG version 2.1 AA, so that's all of the A plus the few extra AA's are in scope for the rule. You don't have to meet the AAA to meet the legal requirement. You can do more than the minimum required by law, and I want to always encourage you. If you have a campus where you have the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to do AAA, or hey, we're going to do WCAG 2.2, right? There's more that can be done. But to meet the minimum legal requirement, we have to support the WCAG 2.1 A and AA success criteria. These are just the rest of those. So there's a list, right? You don't have to know all of these, but you should have a general idea of what these mean and how to look at a website and tell if it's accessible or not. Now, if you're going to ask a vendor for EIR, ask them to fill out a VPAT. So this template lists all of the success criteria from WCAG, and the vendor is supposed to give you a response. It's supposed to be either supports, partially supports, or does not support. And the two other ones that get thrown in are not evaluated, which we score as a does not support, are not applicable, which we score as supports because it just does not pertain to the particular interface. Especially when you can get VPATs year over year over year, it allows you to gauge the vendor's remediation, right? Are they making progress? Are they getting there? Are they meeting their roadmap, right? Perhaps in a different session, we can talk about VPATs and scoring VPATs and reviewing VPATs, but we can't really drill into that this morning. Okay, I think I went backwards. Beg your pardon. Okay. Why? Sometimes your campus might say, why do we have to do this? Well, there's two reasons. One, because we care, right? We want people to receive the information we're trying to share with them. And two, it's the law. Okay, there's just no way to sugarcoat that. It is a legal requirement. I have a whole PowerPoint presentation on where does the law say my PowerPoint has to be accessible, and I follow all the breadcrumbs. So if you want to talk about that, let me know and we'll go through that at a different session. Okay. There's even more laws than the main ones that I just listed, because accessibility is kind of tacked on to the end of a lot of things like voting and housing. Okay. What the law requires is that all EIR is accessible, and that is defined by complying with WCAG 2.1 AA. Here's the problem. We have a lot of inaccessible PDFs and electronic documents on our campuses. WCAG is not a PDF standard. It's the legal requirement. It's what we have to use, but they're really taking apples and selling them as oranges. So if you have someone in your campus say that WCAG is not a PDF standard, right, we know that it's not, but that's what the government has elected to use as the standard. So that is what we use. Now, if you want to go out and campaign to have that change, I will fully support you. But this is the world we live in today. Okay, it isn't just schools. So if you are talking to a vendor and they say, well, no one else is asking for this, you know, 5, 6 years ago, I believe that that was true. That the vendors I was talking to, no one else was saying, we need you to be accessible. But I don't believe that to be true any longer. Uh, Schools in particular see this April looming deadline and know we have to make progress. We have to get accessible. But that's Title II of the ADA. Title III of the ADA applies to places of public accommodations. And here's a list. So things like hotels and motels and restaurants and convention centers and daycares and doctors and lawyers' offices. It's not just schools that have to be accessible. So when a vendor is trying to say, I'm not going to do this, they need to understand they're not just losing higher ed or any ed, they're going to lose these other business types as well. Okay, there are some exceptions to the DOJ rule. Now, at this point, I'm only talking about the federal rule because every state is different. Texas has their own Texas Administrative Code, TAC 21337, that has our own list of what we can do exception forms for, and it's different than the federal government. So the DOJ rule, which applies to anything web-based or mobile applications, allows you to have an archived section on your website. Now, they say it has to be labeled, right? And anything you put into the archived section is not required to be compliant, but it cannot be actively used, changed, updated, or needed for reference after the compliance date. So if it's baseball scores from 1985, yep, stick it in there. If you're going to go back in and add photographs of those players, now you have to make it accessible. And if you're making it accessible, it's probably not in the archived content section. So there's some nuances there that schools are having to figure out. Pre-existing conventional electronic documents. Again, it's pre-existing. I think that's the same thing as archived web content, right? But if it's a document you have to use, like you have to fill out this form to apply for admission, then it's in use and that cannot be archived. It has to be updated. Okay, this one's a little bit nuanced. Content posted by a third party when there's no contractual licensing or other agreement. The example I like the best for this is social media. I, as school, post about my homecoming. Okay, that post has to be accessible. We created it, we put it out there. John Doe student puts a comment with a GIF that's not accessible. As long as we're not contracting with that student, as long as we don't have an agreement with them of any kind, we're not responsible for what they post. If you hire a vendor like a Hootsuite to plaster social media postings across the web, You're in a contract with them. You're paying that vendor to do that service. All of those posts are in scope and must be accessible. Old social media posts can be exempt, and that's kind of under the archived heading. If not using the resource would cause a fundamental alteration in an activity, program, or service, you can claim an exception. Now, this is where you accessibility professionals have to make friends with your attorneys because they are the ones who are going to have to stand up in court and defend this exception. Our legal department actually came up with a template we have to use. Name of resource is not accessible. It is used for whatever program, service, activity, and then the why. And these are not rubber stamped. They absolutely are not. I meet with legal every week and we review the fundamental alteration arguments for that week. If you have an attendance tracking platform that's accessible and someone wants to use one that's not accessible, how can you claim that that's a fundamental alteration argument? You can't. We now have two disallowed resources. I'm not going to say them publicly, but they're not accessible. They're not going to be accessible. The vendor has no intention of making them accessible. They are now disallowed. There are alternatives like Adobe Sign and MyEmma that we have access to that do provide accessible output. So we can no longer use something else just because someone is used to it or because they want to. Minimal impact. So this is very nuanced. How many times have I said that word today? If you document that the WCAG failures are cause minimal impact to those with disabilities versus those without disabilities, you can still use that resource. I actually created an argument for this last week regarding the use of Zoom. If you look at the Zoom Windows VPAT, it passes, no problem. But if you look at the other interfaces, their VPAT does not pass our scorecard. Whereas Teams, they all pass, no matter if it's Android or iOS or whatever the interface is. But I know people that have blindness that prefer Zoom. Now, that may be because JAWS only runs on Windows, so therefore they're using the Windows interface with Zoom and it's accessible. I argue that the issues with the other interfaces cause a minimal impact because if you have a disability and you prefer Zoom, that's what you want to use. And it actually would cause more issues for you if we forced you to use Teams. So again, that has to go through legal. Every campus may handle that differently, but I wanted to try to explain minimal impact. The way I define it in my head that legal doesn't like me to say is, oh, it's bad for everyone. Right? It's not necessarily discriminating against those with disabilities. It has some issues for everyone. Okay, so now let's get down into the nuts and bolts. Number one, and if you don't have this, I don't know how you move forward. Leadership directive. And when I say leadership, I mean president, chancellor, the very top, however tip top you can get, there has to be a directive. So we started our program December 2018. And I was working from the bottom up. Laura said you have to do this, right? I would get in an elevator and introduce myself to someone, and then I'd say my name, and they, oh, because you're the one making us do all this hard stuff. But it changed. When we got our new president a few years ago, she came in and put it in our 2030 strategic plan twice. We're going to be accessible. There's a directive from the president. our websites are going to be accessible. Our course content is going to be accessible. Our communications are going to be accessible. Our school colors are orange and blue. And it doesn't matter what you do with that orange, it will never have sufficient color contrast against white. She was able to go through our Board of Regents and get an approved alternate orange for web use. It was an ordeal because there's copyright and trademark and identity and branding, but we could not use that orange on our website. It took a few years, but she got it done. So that is number one. You have to have a directive from the top. Right under that is campus-wide coordination. If you don't have friends in these other departments, you need to go make some. If you're the one who's going to be pushing this program on your campus, you cannot do it by yourself. I see a lot of accessibility posts online about, are you the unicorn? Okay, a unicorn is a mystical creature. You can't do it by yourself. And you don't want to, right? When you do retire one day, you want that program to have its own feet. You want it to have its own momentum. You want it to be the culture and the way that things are done out of habit, not because someone's making you do it. So these are the other teams that you need to work cooperatively with to make processes. Of course, IT, legal, your marketing team, procurement, compliance, internal audit, faculty affairs, and the information security office. Okay, creating the culture. So these are the 10 key components of a successful, measured success EIR accessibility program. Number one, you have to publish a policy. And I will tell you, again, that took several years. It took getting our president, who's here now. I think she started in the fall and we had that thing signed over the Christmas break. Now, here's the trick to a policy is you cannot publish a policy that requires less than your legal requirement. And that was the problem. People saying, well, you can't really expect our websites. Well, you can't really expect, we can't really do what the law requires. It would be like saying, we're going to publish a policy that says, I know the speed limit's 55, but we know everyone really drives 60, 65, some even 70. So let's just say our policy is 65. No, no. One of my favorite things people will say to me is, you can't expect us to be fully compliant. Like, I expect you to be minimally compliant. All right, compliant is compliant. It doesn't matter what adjective you put in front of it, but let's not make it sound harder than it is. Just all I'm looking for is minimum accessibility. You don't have to do AAA. You don't have to do 2.2. You don't have to be looking at 3.0, just 2.1 AA. Put it in a policy. And once you have a policy, you have a whole lot more ammunition, right? Number two, get it put into your annual compliance training. That also took a couple of years, but it's there now. And I work cooperatively with our compliance team and with our ADA person and our Title II people. And so it's not just the ERAC page in our training. It's scattered throughout. Remember, you are responsible. If you create a document, if you are sharing a syllabus, if you are responsible for a web page, for procurement of software, you're responsible. Everyone is responsible. Okay, number three, you got to have a training program. You've got to have resources. You will find some people want to be accessible, right? They just didn't know. And I get that. We did a lot of in-person, every month we did a Word class and a PowerPoint and a PDF and a what is it and why do we have to do it class. But just this last fall, our knowledge services team actually generated video tutorials and training guides. And it's made a huge difference. It gives us a single point of truth. And it was frustrating because we would write this manual and then there would be an update to Microsoft or to Adobe and something would change. So we are keeping them in SharePoint as a Word document. So we're not doing all of the PDF remediation just to have to do it again because there was an update. But we have like in Word, we have a Word, Mac version and a Windows version because some of the steps are different. Our videos are out on YouTube. Uh, if you can't easily find them, let me know. I will send a link out. Okay, website accessibility reporting. There's lots of tools out there, and I am going to try to not say the name of ours because I don't want to, endorse a product. But we pay a vendor to crawl through 50,000 of our web pages and give us an accessibility report. I completely understand that that is not reviewing all of the WCAG criteria. There are only a portion of the criteria that can be automated for a check, but it's the tool that we have. And then we couple that with centralized website governance. So we use Sitecore for our main platform. We use Campus Press for our faculty and lab pages. And then there's a few instances where we are using Cascade. But that's all governed by OIT. And OIT issues not only the domain name approved by the marketing people, but the template that that person is going to use. And by controlling the template, we can control a lot of the things that can't be checked on an automated checker. And then it's education, right? Hey, new website owner, here's the video on how to use our checking tool, right? Um, and I have some slides further on about how we're doing in this regard. I'm going to speed up and not read each of these to you because I actually have a slide for each one. So these are the 10 we're going to talk about. I've already talked about policy because I got ahead of myself. I've already talked about compliance training and about training resources. There's a lot of free training out there. I did link to both the W3C training and the Section 508 training because I think they're good. I'm always disappointed if I pay for training and then it's bad. I remember when I was just starting out, I didn't know how to make an accessible PowerPoint, and I paid to go to a conference. They taught me how. I came home, I was training people, and then I hired a student worker who was blind. And you know what? I did not know how to make a PowerPoint that was accessible. I didn't know about Slide Masters at all. So I had paid like $400 to go learn how to do this and didn't actually learn. So thank you, Bob. I know you've been doing this a long time. It is important to be sure you're giving your campus good training resources. As far as website accessibility, if you have a web development team, the DHS Trusted Tester Certification Program is free and it is good. Okay, it's not for the regular John Doe, but for someone who is managing websites and website development, it's a good program. Also, if you're having to test websites, it's a good program. Okay. Um, it's people will say, well, my emails don't have to be accessible because I don't have anyone on my team with a disability. And I say to those people two things. One, that you know of, because you may not know. And two, today. Maybe you don't today, but no one knows what tomorrow brings. And certainly we're not going to discriminate against people with disabilities because that would be immoral and illegal. So yes, even emails to your team must be accessible. And honestly, it's just not that hard, right? Let's talk about color contrast. Let's talk about headings. Let's talk about alt text on images. Email accessibility is easy. Okay. Course content. Okay. I don't know at your campus how you're prioritizing these different pillars of accessibility. Uh, for us, we use Canvas as our LMS. Um, our Canvas course content is kind of our last piece of the puzzle. Um, we've kind of done everything else, and now this is the Herculean lift to get completed this semester. Um, it's hard, but we can do it. And it's being driven by our provost office because that's where our faculty affairs department sits. So it's not just Laura out there saying, hey, faculty member, you gotta, you gotta, you gotta. It's the provost saying, deans, this is what has to happen. Again, it is important to have an automated tool of some sort. We have a tool. Am I a huge fan of it? No, but at least it's something. It gives us a number. Even if it's not a perfect number, it gives us some information. And so we can measure how are we doing. Last week, did we go up? Did we go down? Right? So it is important to have some way to measure course content. But it's only going to measure the content that's actually in Canvas. So if you do not have a directive to your faculty, hey, we are using Canvas, you have to put your stuff in Canvas. You have to have your syllabus, you have to have your tests, everything has to be in there, or you alone are responsible. If you're going off and using this other website that we don't know about, you bear 100% of the liability on that. So be sure that your campus has a way that they are making that communication to faculty. Have a pre-approved list. We did, and then we didn't, but we're about to again. If the accessibility professionals and the information security office and enterprise architecture can all agree, we're going to use Adobe Sign. Put it out there on the pre-approved list. You're going to use Miema. Put it out there on a pre-approved list. Things that you can all agree on, put it out there. If it's not pre-approved, campus has to submit a submission form. And it's going to have to go through the accessibility review and the security review and the enterprise architecture review. It might have to go to endpoint management. We want to make it easy for campus to use accessible, safe resources. All right. So when you submit this ticket, we use ServiceNow. I assume every campus has some sort of ticketing system. It's one ticket. Each of the teams has an approval option. If any team rejects it, the whole thing's closed. So if ISO comes in and says, nope, you can't use TikTok, it's rejected. No one else has to even look at it. Once all three teams have approved it, then your request is approved and you're ready to move forward with purchase or use if it's free, because there is no exclusion for things being free. They have to go through the same review as though you paid $100,000 for it. This is our review process. We ask for a VPAT every time. Every time we get a tab rec for whatever it is, we try to get a VPAT. If they're online, that makes it easy. If not, we email them. We look to see if it's something that we consider a minimal impact, which today, the only thing we have on that is Zoom. We have an exception form that our president has signed that we can apply to any request that costs less than $25,000 a year, is used by 50 or fewer employees annually, and or 50 or fewer students annually. Those parameters are considered low risk. And about half of our requests are approved under that method. So a professor wants a resource that only they are going to use, we can approve it. We still ask for the VPAT because if we can get a VPAT and it's accessible, we're going to ask that it be added to the pre-approved list. No one else should have to put in a request to have that resource looked at. If we can't use any of those as an approval method, then we have to get an exception form processed. If it's web-based or a mobile app, it has to have the fundamental alteration argument reviewed by legal. These require a signature by a dean or a vice president. And then, in addition to that, they are reviewed quarterly by our ACTOR committee. ACTOR stands for Accessibility Coordination Team for EIR Remediation. Okay, it's quite the acronym, but that is a UT system requirement. Oh, I better check time. Okay, I got 10 minutes and then we'll have questions. Next, we have procurement. So before someone submits a requisition or uses their credit card to buy something or downloads it, even if it's free, they're supposed to have the review completed. My team and the information security team, we are in the approval workflow for requisitions. So in between the department approval of the requisition and it being issued to a PO to the procurement, it comes to us first. It's by account code, so we don't get everything, but anything computer or software related, we see. And if we haven't gotten their submission form, we don't approve it. We have to contact them and say, what's your request number? And then they put it in. Ooh, digital signage. Pay attention, y'all. When you walk across your campus, you walk into a building, there's a display sign there, flashing stuff up. Look for insufficient color contrast. Look for things that flash faster than 3 times a second. Think about your arenas, your ball games. Are they potentially sending people into epileptic seizures by having things that flash faster than 3 times a second? If they do, you need to go talk to those people, right? We don't want that to happen. We have made huge progress in our digital signage on campus over the last few years. Our arena teams are really on top of things, and they've really gone above and beyond. They've taken charge of their accessibility programs, and they have little kits for people on the autism spectrum that they can come in and get headphones and weighted blankets and that kind of thing. So just be aware this is a big part of accessibility is your digital signage on campus. Okay. Think about it in everything you do. Wear that lens, right? Be the voice in the room. Every time a flyer shows up in your email, especially if your school colors are yellow and white or orange and white or even green and white, unless it's a dark green, watch for it. One in 12 people have some type of color blindness. Plus, as we age, our eyes start to lose elasticity and we need better contrast. If you look at your parents' phones and go, Mom, why is your font so big? That's because I need better contrast. And have you ever been looking on a website and you just give up? Okay, you don't want people to give up when they're trying to get information from your school, whether it's about an assignment or about a fundraiser or about what's for lunch. You want people to receive the information you are trying to share. So always be the voice in the room. If you are a research institution, think about how not being accessible will impact those results. If you're inviting people to sign up to participate in a research activity, but your invitation excludes everyone who's colorblind or everyone who's blind or everyone who can't use a mouse, you've already skewed your results. Now, if that was the intention and you've documented that in your IRB and it was still approved, okay, long as you know. But what if you're skewing your results by accident? So, same thing for hiring. Same thing for prospective students, for alumni. It impacts everything that we do. Okay, so here's the goal. We want it to be habit. We want everyone at your campus, if they see orange and white pop up in the email, they go, right? They figure out who sent that. Who sent that? Let's fix that. Or they open a video and there's no captions. They're on Facebook and they see your school posted a video and you play it and there's no captions. You're going to tell somebody because you are not sharing that information equally. So how do we measure? And I'm sorry, I did put the name of our crawler on this slide, but this is how we've done year over year, 2023 to 2026. The number of sites we are reporting on has grown substantially. The numbers from the bottom row to the top row have shifted higher to the left, which is what we want. We have more sites at Target than we did in 2023 when we didn't have any at Target. So Target is said at WCAG 2.1 AA. We have over 50% of our sites being within 1 point are at Target. 82% within 5 points. This shows us we know how to do it. We know how to train people to keep their websites accessible. The stuff that's left is not the hard stuff. It's color. Get rid of the orange and white on your website. It's things like an empty heading, right? They deleted something and didn't get the heading tag deleted. It's not that we have to redesign everyone's websites. We did that in 2019. And then even our worst score, in 2023, it was 47.49 away from target. Now our worst score is 18.42 away from target. So measuring website accessibility is really showing how we as a campus, we are close, right? We are almost there. Our average site accessibility target score is just over 97% now as of last week. Okay, so Canvas course content. We're going to get there. It's pulling teeth, but we're going to get there. There will be some exceptions documented. The two that we know we're going to process exception forms are inaccessible PDFs of musical scores. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have to make accommodations. They do. They have to provide either a person to explain the section that this student needs, audio links, right? Maybe by instrumentation section or the whole piece, depending on the learning objective, right? We still have to teach the content, even if we don't have the skill or knowledge or technology to make that PDF accessible. The other areas that we know we will have to make exception forms are some of the drafting classes, and then some of the geology classes where they're showing photographs of gradient browns to show soil changes. Okay, they can't not be brown, right? That's the learning objective. They're all very similar to each other, but we're going to document that. We're going to make a plan for how we're going to accommodate. We're going to let students know in advance, hey, when you get to this chapter, this has an inaccessible photograph. Here's who's going to assist you. And we're going to share that with our Office for Students with Disabilities that we call the SAR Center. The SAR Center is going to know which courses are going to need accommodations instead of always being a surprise, right? The other thing we have now actually accomplished, which when I first put this presentation together last fall, we were still working on, is every division has a digital champion. This digital champion went through 9 hours of training, and they were designated as by their dean or vice president as the person who would champion accessibility in their division. So they're on the lookout. They're the voice in the room. Is this accessible? Hey, don't forget you have to add captions, that kind of thing. Okay, you can do it, right? I have all the faith in the world in you, but you have to start. And it can be hard, it can be scary, but pick something, right? Every day, do something to not only for you to get on that path, but to get your whole institution on the path. And then in this PowerPoint presentation, I have links to our published policy procedure, my website, and you're welcome to visit them if you would like. Okay, I think I am at time. We have 15 minutes for questions. Let me see.
Well, I have a couple of comments. Well, one, I really like the idea that of the champions for this. It's one thing. I'm still amazed in this day and age, so many people are still ignorant of accessibility issues. I go back to Pennsylvania system office for the state system, and we also had classrooms there as well. We did within the system a lot of classes delivered by video conference. And one of the rooms was on the third floor of a building, had an elevator. But one day, the facilities director sent an email out that in this building, the elevator was going to be offline for 4 or 5 days.
Oh.
Well, I knew that the class on the third floor had a woman in a wheelchair. So I asked the facilities director, "How are you going to deal with that if they have to if there's a fire and they have to exit, or just how does this woman get to and from the classroom during those days?"
Hmm.
And he just gave me this blank look. I don't know. And that's not acceptable.
Not
You've
acceptable.
got to
That's
be able
right.
to accommodate. I don't care if it's one person or 20 persons. It's got to be, you got to make that accommodation. And then same thing goes with just designing classrooms. On one of our campuses, they designed a new ITV classroom. They had their podium. And the problem was the podium was pretty close to the wall. You
Mm.
could stand there, no problem. There was no way a wheelchair could get behind the podium. Even
Yeah.
if they could, they couldn't reach the controls. Then
Right.
the last example, uh, taking a tour of one of the schools, they wanted to show their new science building and we went to their really nice wet lab. It was great, except there's no way somebody in a wheelchair could use it. You had to stand
Mm.
to use the sinks, and there was no, they're designed so you couldn't even push a wheelchair under it and reach. And they had no idea what are you going to do if there's somebody in a wheelchair. In a brand new building, you would think somebody somewhere would have brought up accessibility. But anyway,
Right.
that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks, Bob. All right, we're going to start off with Trey. I see your hand up.
Hi there. Thank you for that presentation. I previously worked with an instructor in diagnostic medical sonography. So they're doing the ultrasounds, and I remember working with her last year. She emphasized that there can be reasonable accommodations that are program specific, and it's not just simply unlimited accommodations. So, for example, to do sonography, you need to be able to see. I'd love to hear you speak more about how accessibility applies to hands-on or clinical programs,
Okay,
particularly
so
with physical, sensory, and technical skills that are like really essential. How do institutions balance that with other programs that may be like, hey, that's not fair that they don't have to do that, versus others that really do. You need those reasonable accommodations versus unlimited.
okay, so
How do you handle that?
so I think what I heard you say was someone who can't see can't do stenography,
Based on needing to be able to see what's on the screen, yes.
but it can be read to you. And then
And
you,
not if I don't know, can it be? I don't know if
well, with
you
assistive technology, will read to you what's on the screen. So just,
on,
I kind of bumped on that first, but let's get to the bigger question is what's a reasonable accommodation, right? So if it is a course that will directly, like the final exam is your certification exam, if that certification exam has physical requirements, you can't be blind to take this exam, then you can have that listed in the course. Um, we only do that with legal's approval. And sometimes what they do is explain to the student, you won't be able to take the certification exam at the end. And these are the modules you will not be able to participate fully with. Our job is not to teach them, our job is to deliver the content to them in a way that they can receive it. Um, which most of the time there is a way to do that. Are there going to be exceptions? Yes. They need to be documented. And I think that that's really where we get to the nuts and bolts is if a professor says, I have to use this because it would cause a fundamental alteration to my program, we're going to allow them and their dean to sign that exception form. But it's going to have to be, MRI software or, something specific. It can't be because I want to use Flickr or SmugMug. No, you're going to have to use SharePoint or, something that's accessible. But yes, there are going to be learning objectives that cannot be presented in an accessible fashion. So we have to make the accommodations that we can, and we have to document what we are and are not going to do. Trey, did that answer the question?
Yeah, it did. I think that's the biggest challenge that I've seen in health sciences
Mm-hmm.
is needing those clinical skills to be able to perform certain things. And it raises a good question that shouldn't necessarily be ignored and to recognize that. Another example would be an accreditation agency that actually indicates that, yeah, you need to be able to see to do
Mm-hmm.
those certain things. And I looked into it. I didn't see that, but it's written within the syllabus and the academic program itself as far as, and I'm not that familiar enough with that, so I didn't push any further.
Yeah, you've got to get your general counsel involved in that. Because again, they're the ones who are going to stand up in court and defend it. So that's where I would land there.
Appreciate
Um,
it. Thank you.
you're welcome. I'm sorry if I'm rushing. I see hands up and questions in the chat. Nicole, we'll go with you and then I'll go to the chat questions.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much for this very enlightening presentation. Definitely was taking notes. My question, I guess, is more related to your digital champion development program. At my institution at UHEC, we're completely online. All of our content and communications are completely digital. So it's definitely a heavy lift for us in training, 2,000 faculty in addition to our staff, in addition to our students on what the requirements are. Um, Even with a very small team of professionals and specialists that are able to teach and train on this content. So is there maybe a website, or can you maybe expand a little bit on what your digital champion development program consists of?
Yes. So the fall was our first cohort, and we did three-hour live sessions. Starting in January, it's actually a Canvas course now, but it is not a course that's open to everyone. It's only the people that have been designated by their leadership to serve as a digital champion in their group. So I can publish if anybody wants it, just email me and say digital champion program, and I will send you the points of each of the 3-hour training sessions. Um, we taught them how do you make an accessible Word document, PowerPoint, PDF. We use Siteimprove. How do you use Siteimprove? How do I know what is color contrast? What does the law require? What are exceptions? What's going to be approved? What's not? That type of thing. And they are the voice in the room. They're supposed to be the voice in the room. They're also my contact. So when I saw something pop up on Facebook the other day, orange and white all over the place, I sent the screenshot to their digital champions. I don't know who put this out there. Would you track it down? So it gave me and legal a single point of contact other than the dean or VP. Because a lot of that stuff I don't need to talk to the dean about. I just need them to get that Facebook post taken down. Nicole, did I answer your question?
Yes,
Laura,
thank you.
oh, I'm sorry. Nicole, you had another comment. Go ahead.
Oh, no, Laura, you covered it. Thank you.
Okay, so Amy says, when you were sharing the exception document, I'm curious how you dealt with the accessibility concern related to citations where a URL is included and it's not descriptive text. Citations like in the footer of a paper. Let me make sure I understand the question.
So we include citations with instructional resources, for example. And so, depending on the program and if they use MLA or APA or whatever citation format they use, we include that. And the tool that we use to scan our documents, we are getting accessibility, errors because we're using the URL because that's how the citation, we're supposed to do that. And so I was wondering if you ran into that, and if so, how did you address that? We were thinking, an exception, but we're still going to get dinged on it in our accessibility
Right.
report.
Yeah, I have not. Everything I've seen, we're using real text that's hyperlinked, and the alt text on the hyperlink is real text.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's one thing I haven't seen at our campus, and maybe I just haven't been looking in the right spot yet, but I'll keep an eye out for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay,
And
have
Laura,
you faced
we
any
are out of
pushback?
time.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
uh, okay, I'll type something in the chat about the vendor. Okay, well, let me just be real quick. We've got 4 minutes. So, um, vendors try to push back, but I'm pretty good at guilt, right? Um, that they need to care. And I've also gotten very good lately about putting it out on listservs. Like if you're a member of EDUCAUSE or a system listserv where the vendor's saying no one else is asking for this, I put them out there. Hey, if you're using this vendor, call him today. And we've had some immediate turnarounds from vendors saying, oh, never mind, sorry. Uh, but yeah, they got to get in the boat. They have to. Um, they don't have to fix it overnight. They have to show us their roadmap, right? Fix the color contrast. That's easy, right? It's about putting in the time, talking to the right people, getting your general counsel involved, and really, your PO terms and conditions say you're going to meet all state and federal laws. It's the law. Okay, I'm out of time, but thank you all very much. Sure. Thank you, Bob, for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. I know with accessibility, man, we could talk forever. And again, it's just frustrating if people in this day and age still seem ignorant about what they need to do. If they just did it right the first time, it wouldn't be an issue. But
Right, right.
it's aside from the law, it's the right thing to do.
It
So
is.
anyway, thank you very much. We've got another session starting in a few minutes. Hopefully, we can see you all there.
All right. Thank you all.